Captain Rebecca Hayes had been making the same diplomatic run for 3 years now. Transit to alien systems, smile at trade negotiations, sign some documents, then head home. Boring work, but it kept humanity's relationships strong with the Galactic Council. Today's trip to the Kalesh system should have been exactly the same. Another handshake, another trade agreement, another week away from Earth. But when the Harmony dropped out of hyperspace, Rebecca knew immediately something was catastrophically wrong. Her navigator spoke first, his voice barely above a whisper. "Captain, I'm reading massive debris fields. They're everywhere." Rebecca leaned forward in her chair, eyes locked on the main view screen. Space shouldn't look like this. The area around Kalesh was supposed to be empty, just peaceful void between jump points. Instead, her sensors were screaming with thousands of contacts. Millions, actually. And they weren't moving. "Get me a visual," she ordered. The screen flickered and Rebecca felt her stomach drop. Bodies. Floating bodies as far as her sensors could detect. Men, women, children. All frozen in the vacuum of space, their faces locked in expressions of terror. Some were still holding each other. Families, she realized. They died holding onto their families. "Oh God," someone whispered behind her. Rebecca didn't turn to see who. She couldn't look away from the screen. Her communications officer, a usually steady man named Daniel Morrison, was frantically checking his systems. "Captain, I'm picking up identification beacons. They're Torlian." The Torlians. Rebecca had visited their homeworld just 2 years ago for a cultural exchange. She'd eaten at their restaurants, watched their children perform traditional songs, attended a festival where they'd celebrated the harvest season. They were farmers and artists, a peaceful species that had never bothered anyone. They'd shared their agricultural techniques with Earth freely, asking nothing in return but friendship. And now they were all dead. All of them. Floating in space like discarded garbage. "Scan for survivors," Rebecca ordered, though she already knew the answer. Nobody survived explosive decompression. Nobody survived having their colony ships torn apart in the void. "Nothing, Captain," Daniel confirmed after several minutes. "I'm detecting residue from their station cores, their colony ships, even their agricultural vessels. Everything. They brought their entire civilization to this system for the migration season." Rebecca closed her eyes. The Torlians migrated every decade, moving their entire population to follow specific cosmic conditions that improved their crops. It was a beautiful tradition. And someone had known exactly when they'd all be together in one place. "Can we recover any of their data systems?" she asked. "Already on it, Captain. I found their central archive. It's damaged but intact. Pulling it now." The next 3 hours were the worst of Rebecca's career. The archive contained everything. Security footage. Sensor logs. Personal recordings. The Torlians had documented their own extinction in perfect detail. The Vrex Dominion had arrived without warning. No communication, no demands, no explanation. They'd simply opened fire on civilian vessels. The Torlian defense ships, only 3 of them, had tried to protect the evacuation. They'd lasted 4 minutes. Rebecca watched footage of a Torlian school ship. The children had been in the middle of a lesson about Earth literature when the hull breach happened. Their teacher had tried to seal the compartment, her body blocking the door while her students scrambled for emergency suits. Neither the teacher nor the students had made it. Another recording showed a hospital vessel. The Vrex had targeted it specifically, firing on the massive red medical symbols painted on its hull. Patients still in their beds had been vented into space. The final transmission came from the Torlian Council leader. He was in an escape pod with his family, watching his entire species die around him. "To whoever finds this," he said in perfect English, "please tell the galaxy what happened here. Tell them the Vrex killed us because they wanted our worlds. Tell them we did nothing wrong. Tell them we just wanted to farm and raise our children in peace." The transmission cut off when something destroyed the pod. Rebecca watched a father and his 3 children simply cease to exist. She sat in her ready room for a long time after that, staring at nothing. 12 billion people. Gone. Erased from the universe because someone else wanted their territory. A proximity alarm snapped her back to reality. 3 Vrex patrol ships had just dropped out of hyperspace, their weapon systems already active. Rebecca straightened her uniform and walked back to the bridge, forcing her face into the neutral diplomatic expression she'd practiced for years. "Open communications," she ordered, her voice steady despite the rage burning in her chest. The Vrex commander appeared on screen. He was reptilian, with dark scales and cold yellow eyes that showed absolutely no emotion. "Human vessel. You are in Vrex territory now. State your business." Rebecca chose her words carefully. Commander, we detected a debris field containing Torlian civilians. Billions of them. Can you explain what happened here? The Vrex commander's face didn't change. If anything, he looked bored. Simple pest control operation. The Torlians occupied 12 worlds we required for expansion. They were removed. Efficiently. Rebecca felt her navigator tense beside her. Lieutenant James Tucker was young, only 24, and this was his first encounter with real galactic politics. His hands were gripping his console so hard his knuckles had turned white. You killed 12 billion civilians, Rebecca said slowly. Including children. They were all civilians, the Vrex replied with something that might have been a shrug. They had no military. Made the operation faster. Your concern is noted but unnecessary, human. We have logged this action with the Galactic Council. They will issue a condemnation, apply economic sanctions, and then everyone moves forward. This is how these matters are handled. He said it so casually. Like he was discussing the weather. Like 12 billion lives meant absolutely nothing. I see, Rebecca managed. We'll be filing our own report with the council. The Vrex commander actually laughed. It was a cold, rasping sound. Of course you will. The humans always so concerned with rules and procedures. You have been in the galaxy for 200 years and learned nothing. The strong take what they need. The weak die. This is nature. File your reports, human. Write your condemnations. We both know nothing will happen. Rebecca watched footage of a Torlian school ship. The children had been in the middle of a lesson about Earth literature when the hull breach happened. Their teacher had tried to seal the compartment, her body blocking the door while her students scrambled for emergency suits. Neither the teacher nor the students had made it. Another recording showed a hospital vessel. The Vrex had targeted it specifically, firing on the massive red medical symbols painted on its hull. Patients still in their beds had been vented into space. The final transmission came from the Torlian Council leader. He was in an escape pod with his family, watching his entire species die around him. To whoever finds this, he said in perfect English, please tell the galaxy what happened here. Tell them the Vrex killed us because they wanted our worlds. Tell them we did nothing wrong. Tell them we just wanted to farm and raise our children in peace. The transmission cut off when something destroyed the pod. Rebecca watched a father and his 3 children simply cease to exist. She sat in her ready room for a long time after that, staring at nothing. 12 billion people. Gone. Erased from the universe because someone else wanted their territory. A proximity alarm snapped her back to reality. 3 Vrex patrol ships had just dropped out of hyperspace, their weapon systems already active. Rebecca straightened her uniform and walked back to the bridge, forcing her face into the neutral diplomatic expression she'd practiced for years. Open communications, she ordered, her voice steady despite the rage burning in her chest. The Vrex commander appeared on screen. He was reptilian, with dark scales and cold yellow eyes that showed absolutely no emotion. Human vessel. You are in Vrex territory now. State your business. Rebecca chose her words carefully. Commander, we detected a debris field containing Torlian civilians. Billions of them. Can you explain what happened here? The Vrex commander's face didn't change. If anything, he looked bored. Simple pest control operation. The Torlians occupied 12 worlds we required for expansion. They were removed. Efficiently. Rebecca felt her navigator tense beside her. Lieutenant James Tucker was young, only 24, and this was his first encounter with real galactic politics. His hands were gripping his console so hard his knuckles had turned white. You killed 12 billion civilians, Rebecca said slowly. Including children. They were all civilians, the Vrex replied with something that might have been a shrug. They had no military. Made the operation faster. Your concern is noted but unnecessary, human. We have logged this action with the Galactic Council. They will issue a condemnation, apply economic sanctions, and then everyone moves forward. This is how these matters are handled. He said it so casually. Like he was discussing the weather. Like 12 billion lives meant absolutely nothing. I see, Rebecca managed. We'll be filing our own report with the council. The Vrex commander actually laughed. It was a cold, rasping sound. Of course you will. The humans always so concerned with rules and procedures. You have been in the galaxy for 200 years and learned nothing. The strong take what they need. The weak die. This is nature. File your reports, human. Write your condemnations. We both know nothing will happen. The transmission ended. The 3 Vrex ships jumped away, not even concerned enough to escort the Harmony out of the system. Rebecca stood frozen on her bridge, looking at the debris field on her view screen. James Tucker turned to her and she could see tears streaming down his face. "Captain, we're just leaving? They murdered billions of people and admitted it, and we're just going to file a report." "We're following protocol," Rebecca said quietly. "Return to your station, Lieutenant." "But Captain?" "Now, Lieutenant. That's an order." James left the bridge and Rebecca heard him break down in the corridor outside. She didn't blame him. She wanted to break down too. Instead, she prepared her report to Earth Command, including every second of footage, every recovered file, every piece of evidence. Her orders came back within an hour. That was fast. Usually Earth Command took days to respond to diplomatic incidents. This time, the reply came directly from Admiral James Mitchell himself, bypassing the entire diplomatic corps. The message was brief: acknowledged. Maintain position and monitor Vrex activity. Stay safe, Captain. Help is coming. Rebecca read those words 3 times. Help is coming. Not await further diplomatic instructions. Not prepare for council mediation. Just help is coming. She'd served in Earth's military for 22 years. She knew what that kind of language meant. That wasn't the language of diplomats. That was the language of soldiers preparing for war. Rebecca looked back at the view screen at the bodies floating in the darkness, and felt something shift in her chest. For 2 centuries, humanity had played by the galaxy's rules. They'd been civilized. They'd been diplomatic. They'd been peaceful. Maybe, she thought, it was time to be something else. The emergency session started at midnight in Geneva. Secretary General Maria Okonkwo hadn't slept in 30 hours, and she didn't plan to sleep anytime soon. The secure chamber filled quickly with representatives from every Earth nation. Nobody was smiling. Nobody made small talk. They'd all seen the footage from the Harmony. Maria watched their faces as they took their seats. These were experienced diplomats, people who'd negotiated treaties and prevented wars. She'd seen them handle terrorist attacks, natural disasters, and diplomatic crises without flinching. But tonight, several of them looked physically ill. Ambassador David Patterson was the first to speak. He was 70 years old, a veteran of Earth's unification wars before humanity joined the Galactic Council. His voice was steady, but Maria could hear the anger underneath. "The evidence is undeniable," David began. "The Vrex Dominion committed systematic genocide against the Torlian species. 12 billion sentient beings eliminated in 72 hours. They targeted civilians specifically. Schools, hospitals, refugee ships. And when our captain asked them about it, they admitted everything. They bragged about it." The main screens activated, showing the recovered footage. Maria had already watched it 5 times, but she forced herself to watch again. The Torlian children in their classroom. The hospital patients. The families huddling together. Every leader in that room needed to see this. They needed to understand what they were deciding. A delegate from Brazil stood up and left the room. Maria didn't stop her. 2 others followed. She understood. Sometimes the horror was too much to witness. President Elena Rodriguez leaned forward. "What's the Galactic Council's response?" David pulled up the official statement on his tablet. His hands were shaking slightly. "A formal condemnation of the Vrex Dominion's excessive use of force. Economic sanctions on military goods for a period of 5 years. And a strongly worded resolution calling for peaceful expansion policies." The room exploded. Voices overlapped, shouting in a dozen languages. Maria let them yell for a full minute before calling for order. "The sanctions are meaningless," David continued once the room quieted. "The Vrex have received identical sanctions 3 times before. Each time they waited out the 5 years and then did exactly the same thing to someone else. The Council's own records show they've eliminated 6 species in the last century. Every single time, the response was condemnation and sanctions. Nothing more." "So the Council is useless," someone said from the back. "The Council is civilized," David corrected. "They follow rules. They believe in proportional responses and diplomatic solutions. They've created a system where genocide gets you the same punishment as a trade dispute. A strongly worded letter and a temporary fine." Maria stood, placing her hands flat on the table. 200 years ago we joined the Galactic Council. We agreed to put away our weapons. We promised to handle conflicts their way. And we have. We've been model members. We've followed every rule, respected every protocol. We became the peaceful species they wanted us to be." She paused, looking around the room. "But what good is peace when it protects murderers? What good is civilization when it enables genocide? I need someone to explain to me how we're supposed to look at 12 billion dead bodies and respond with economic sanctions. Nobody answered. General Kyle Anderson cleared his throat. He was the senior military commander for all of Earth's forces. Maria had known him for 15 years and she'd never seen him look this serious. Madam Secretary General, the military has something to show you. A protocol most people don't know exists. Kyle pulled out a secure tablet and entered a long series of authorization codes. A document appeared on the main screens. Maria read the title twice, not quite believing what she was seeing. Article 0. Authorization for unlimited military response to genocide. What is this? Maria asked. Kyle stood, addressing the entire room. When humanity joined the Galactic Council, we agreed to their warfare restrictions. Limited engagements. Proportional responses. Rules designed to make war almost impossible. And we followed those rules faithfully. We retired our weapons. We changed our military doctrine. We became peaceful. He pulled up another document. But some of us remembered history. We remembered what happened in Rwanda, in Cambodia, in Armenia. We remembered every time good people followed rules while evil people ignored them. We remembered every genocide that happened because civilization was too polite to stop it. Kyle opened a file directory showing thousands of documents. So we kept everything. Every weapon system the Council wanted us to retire. Every tactical manual they called barbaric. Every piece of military knowledge humanity developed over 10,000 years of warfare. We stored it all in sealed facilities. Top secret. Classified above presidential clearance. We hoped we'd never need any of it again. The room was completely silent now. Even the people who'd left were returning, standing in the doorway to listen. General Anderson, Ambassador Lisa Morgan said slowly, "Are you suggesting we go to war with the Vrex Dominion?" "I'm suggesting," Kyle replied carefully, "that we remember why we created such strict rules for ourselves. It wasn't because we didn't know how to fight wars. It was because we knew too much about fighting wars. We understood our own capacity for violence, so we chained ourselves down. Those chains were meant to protect other species from us, not to protect genocidal monsters from justice." Maria sat down heavily. "Show me what you have." Kyle activated another file. Technical specifications appeared on screen. Weapon systems. Ship designs. Tactical doctrines. Things Maria had never seen before, despite her security clearance. "Our diplomatic ships are real," Kyle explained. "We really did become peaceful. But we also kept our warships in hidden facilities. We kept our soldiers trained in what we call classical doctrine. The way humans fought wars before the Council civilized us. And we kept this protocol sealed and ready. Just in case." "Just in case of what?" Elena asked. "Just in case being civilized stopped being enough," Kyle said simply. The debate that followed lasted 6 hours. Some argued that using violence made Earth no better than the Vrex. Others insisted that failing to act made them complicit in future genocides. Religious leaders spoke about just war theory. Philosophers discussed the ethics of force. Military advisors presented casualty estimates. But everyone kept coming back to the same footage. The Torlian children. The hospital ships. 12 billion people who died because the galaxy was too civilized to protect them. Finally, at 6 in the morning, Maria called for a vote. Her voice was hoarse from talking. "All in favor of invoking Article 0 and authorizing military response against the Vrex Dominion." Hands rose across the room. Maria counted them twice. Nearly unanimous. She entered her personal authorization code into the secure terminal. The code that would activate protocols that hadn't been used in 2 centuries. Her hands were steady, but her heart was pounding. "General Anderson, you now have operational freedom. But I'm giving you one absolute order." Maria looked directly at him. "You will remember that we're human. That means we don't commit genocide. You will be brutal to their military, but you will protect their civilians. Every single one. Can you do that?" Kyle saluted. "Yes, ma'am. We'll show them the difference between justice and murder." As the diplomats filed out, looking exhausted and traumatized, Admiral James Mitchell entered with a group of military officers. They'd been waiting in the next room. Kyle handed him a sealed case. "Glass box protocol," Kyle said quietly. "Everything we stored. Everything we hoped we'd never use again." James opened the case. Inside were data drives containing tactical information humanity hadn't accessed in 200 years. Ways of fighting that made even experienced soldiers uncomfortable. Psychological warfare techniques. Strategic doctrines designed for total warfare. Methods that worked but violated every principle of civilized combat. He closed the case and looked at his team. Gentlemen, we have 72 hours to prepare. In that time we're going to remember everything we forgot. And then we're going to teach the Vrex Dominion why humanity made such strict rules for ourselves. One of the junior officers looked nervous. Sir, what if the council tries to stop us? James smiled, but there was no humor in it. They'll try. They'll condemn us. They'll threaten sanctions. But they won't actually stop us. Because deep down, every species in that council knows the truth. They know they can't. Why not, sir? The officer asked. Because they're civilized, James replied. And we're about to remember how to be something else. The authorization went out on encrypted channels. Across Earth's solar system, hidden facilities began powering up. Ships that hadn't moved in 2 centuries fired their engines. Soldiers reported for deployment, many of them historians and military scholars who'd studied classical doctrine as academic exercise. Now they'd use it for real. The Galactic Council would call it barbaric. They'd call it excessive. They'd call it inhumane. But 12 billion Torlians were dead, and humanity was done being civilized about genocide. The mobilization began 30 minutes after authorization, and it scared everyone who witnessed it. Admiral James Mitchell stood in the command center of Outpost Sentinel, a military station humanity had built inside a hollowed-out asteroid in the belt between Mars and Jupiter. For 200 years, this place had been maintained but never activated. Now, every screen glowed with activity. Every terminal had an operator. The facility hummed with energy it hadn't used since before Earth joined the Galactic Council. Around him, holographic displays showed ships emerging from concealed hangars across the solar system. They came from inside moons, from beneath the surfaces of asteroids, from camouflage stations in the outer planets. These weren't the sleek white diplomatic vessels the galaxy knew. These were gray and black warships, angular and brutal, designed by people who understood violence. Sir, we're receiving a priority communication from the Kelter Embassy, his communications officer reported. The Kelter were Earth's closest allies in the Council. They'd supported humanity's membership, helped with technology transfers, and generally been friendly neighbors. James accepted the call, knowing this conversation wouldn't be pleasant. Ambassador Trell appeared on screen, his 4 eyes blinking in distress. His translator couldn't keep up with how fast he was talking. Admiral Mitchell, our deep space sensors are detecting massive fleet movements. Weapons signatures we've never seen before. What is Earth doing? We're responding to the Torlian genocide, James replied calmly. But the Council has already issued sanctions. James cut him off. Ambassador, with respect, your sanctions are worthless. The Vrex have violated them 3 times already. Each time they waited 5 years and killed someone else. We're done waiting. Trell's translator struggled with his rapid speech. Admiral, the weapons your ships are carrying violate 17 Council regulations. Our analysts detect banned munition signatures, prohibited weapon systems, tactical formations that haven't been used since the ancient wars. This will make you pariahs. We didn't destroy anything, James explained, his voice flat. When we agreed to your rules, we stored everything you wanted gone. We hoped we'd never need it. Turns out we were wrong. But why keep it? Why maintain weapons you promised to abandon? James leaned closer to the screen. Because we're human, Ambassador. We know our own history. We know what happens when good people follow rules while bad people don't. So we prepared. We hoped for the best and planned for the worst. Right now we're living the worst. The Council will condemn you, Trell warned. Let them, James said. Condemnation doesn't kill us. And right now, the Vrex need to learn what happens when they push humanity too far. The transmission ended. James turned to his operations team. Colonel Patricia Bennett had spent 25 years studying military history, writing papers about ancient human warfare. She'd never expected to actually use any of that knowledge. Now she was coordinating the largest military operation since Earth's unification. Status report, James ordered. Patricia pulled up fleet positions on the main display. First wave is ready. 50,000 soldiers, all volunteers. Every single one studied classical doctrine. The older veterans are training the younger ones right now. Across Earth's colonies, training facilities ran around the clock. Soldiers drilled in tactics the galaxy hadn't seen in millennia. Lightning assaults. Psychological operations. Overwhelming force applied with surgical precision. The training made some of the younger recruits uncomfortable. This wasn't the clean, civilized warfare they'd learned about in school. Lieutenant James Tucker had been transferred from the Harmony to serve as a forward intelligence officer. He stood in a training facility on Luna, watching a tactical exercise and felt his stomach turn. The simulation showed human forces decimating an enemy position using methods that seemed excessive, even cruel. "Is this really necessary?" he asked his squad leader. Sergeant Kevin Foster was 47 years old. He'd been a military historian before volunteering for active duty. He'd written 3 books about pre-council warfare. "Kid, you need to understand something. The galaxy fights wars like chess matches. Agreed upon rules. Limited moves. Everyone shakes hands and goes home after. Humanity used to fight wars like they were existential threats. Because for most of human history they were. But we're supposed to be better than that now," James protested. Kevin nodded. "We are better. That's why we're only targeting military installations. That's why we're evacuating civilians before we strike. That's why we're following rules of engagement even though our enemy didn't. But being better doesn't mean being toothless. The Vreks need to understand what they're facing." Back on the Harmony, Captain Rebecca Hayes received new orders. Her ship wasn't returning to Earth. Instead, engineering teams were installing advanced reconnaissance equipment she'd never seen before. Admiral Mitchell appeared on her secure channel. "Captain Hayes, you're now our primary intelligence asset. Your mission is simple. Map every Vreks military installation in their territory. Command centers. Fleet yards. Ammunition depots. Shipyards. Everything." "What about civilian areas?" Rebecca asked. "Mark those green. Military gets marked red. We need absolute precision, Captain. We're going to hit 300 Vreks worlds simultaneously. But we need accurate intelligence to avoid civilian casualties." Rebecca understood what he wasn't saying. "We're painting targets." "Exactly. The Vreks Dominion controls 1,200 worlds. We're going to cripple their military infrastructure in a single coordinated strike. But I need you to make sure we hit the right targets." "Admiral," Rebecca said carefully, "are we really doing this? Are we becoming what we used to be?" There was a long pause. When James spoke again, his voice was tired. "Captain, 200 years ago we decided to be better people. And we have been. We've been peaceful. We've been diplomatic. We've followed every rule. But the galaxy mistook our civilization for weakness. They thought we forgot how to fight. We didn't forget. We just chose not to. The Vreks took that choice away when they committed genocide. What if we can't come back from this?" Rebecca asked. "What if we become the monsters?" "That's why we're protecting civilians," James replied. "That's why we're following engagement protocols even when our enemy didn't. That's the difference between justice and revenge. We're going to be brutal to their military and humane to their people. Can you do your part?" Rebecca looked at the new equipment being installed on her ship. Sensors that could detect military installations from light years away. Communication jammers. Stealth systems that would make her ship nearly invisible. "Yes, sir. We'll get you accurate targets." The fleet assembled in deep space beyond Pluto's orbit. 5,000 ships, ranging from small destroyers to massive carriers. Each one carried weapon systems that hadn't been used in 2 centuries. Rail guns that could punch through any known shielding. Plasma cannons that operated at temperatures the Council considered inhumane. Kinetic missiles that were frighteningly simple and devastatingly effective. The crews worked with grim efficiency. Engineers ran constant diagnostics. Tactical officers planned strike patterns. Medical teams prepared for casualties, though everyone hoped the overwhelming force would minimize resistance. Allied species that detected the buildup sent increasingly panicked messages. The Andorian Federation requested clarification. The Poran Collective asked if Earth needed assistance. Even species that barely knew humanity sent worried inquiries. Earth's response to all of them was the same: internal military exercise. No cause for concern. Nobody believed it. Everyone could see what was happening. Humanity was preparing for war on a scale the modern galaxy had never witnessed. 70 hours after authorization, Admiral Mitchell gathered his senior staff for final briefing. The room was silent as he pulled up tactical displays showing the Vreks Dominion's territory. "We have one shot at this," he began. "The moment we strike, every species in the galaxy will know what we're doing. The Council will try to intervene. Diplomatic pressure will be enormous. So we need to be fast and we need to be thorough." He highlighted 300 Vreks worlds. "These are our primary targets. Each one has significant military infrastructure. We hit them all at once. Destroy their ability to wage war. Then we give them one chance to surrender." "And if they don't?" someone asked. Then we keep going until they do, James replied simply. But we protect civilians. That's not negotiable. Any commander who violates civilian protection protocols will face court-martial. We're not becoming the Vrex. We're stopping them. Colonel Patricia Bennett pulled up engagement rules. All strikes limited to military targets. Civilians must be warned and evacuated when possible. Medical facilities are off limits. Food production facilities are off limits. We're destroying their ability to fight, not their ability to live. James looked around the room at his officers. Some were young, eager, ready to prove themselves. Others were older, more cautious, understanding the weight of what they were about to do. 200 years ago, humanity was very good at war, he said quietly. Too good. We killed each other by the millions. We developed weapons that could end civilization. We fought wars so brutal that we scared ourselves. That's why we agreed to the Council's rules. Not because we couldn't do terrible things anymore. Because we could and we knew it. He activated the final authorization sequence. The Vrex are about to learn a lesson the rest of the galaxy forgot. Humans prefer peace. We really do. We'll negotiate, compromise, and follow diplomatic protocols as long as they work. But when someone commits genocide, when they murder 12 billion innocent people and brag about it, we remember what we really are. The fleet powered up. 5,000 ships, carrying 50,000 soldiers, armed with 2 centuries of stored weapons and 10,000 years of warfare knowledge. James opened a single channel to Vrex space, broadcasting on every frequency their communications could detect. Vrex Dominion, this is Admiral James Mitchell of Earth's military forces. You committed genocide against the Torlian species. Your leaders will stand trial for war crimes. Your military will be dismantled. Surrender now or face the consequences. This is not a negotiation. This is not a threat. This is a promise. He closed the channel and gave the order. All ships jump. The fleet vanished into hyperspace. The age of civilized humanity had just paused and something much older had woken up. The Vrex were about to learn why humanity had made such strict rules for themselves. The Vrex Dominion's military command center on Vrexer Prime detected the human fleet 3 seconds before it arrived. 3 seconds wasn't nearly enough time to do anything except watch in horror. Admiral James Mitchell's fleet materialized across 300 Vrex worlds simultaneously. The coordination was perfect, the timing impossible by any galactic standard. Every human ship knew exactly where to be and exactly what to target. Years of careful intelligence gathering by Captain Hayes and her crew had paid off. All units, weapons free, James ordered from his command ship. Military targets only. Confirm all civilian areas marked green before firing. What happened next was warfare the galaxy hadn't witnessed in thousands of years. Human ships didn't engage in the ritualized combat the Galactic Council mandated. There were no warning shots. No opportunities for honorable withdrawal. No proportional responses. They simply destroyed every military target with overwhelming efficiency. On Vrexer Prime, Supreme Commander Krell watched his defense network vanish from tracking screens. One moment he had 200 orbital defense satellites protecting the homeworld. The next moment they were debris. What kind of weapons are these? He demanded, his scales flushing dark with stress. His tactical officer's voice shook. They're using kinetic strikes, plasma bombardment, and something our sensors can't even identify. Our shields are useless against them. They're targeting our fleet yards, ammunition depots, command centers. Commander, we just lost 12 military installations on the northern continent. All destroyed in under 60 seconds. Krell activated the emergency distress beacon to the Galactic Council. This is Supreme Commander Krell of the Vrex Dominion. We are under unprovoked attack by human forces. They are violating warfare protocols. We need immediate Council intervention. Admiral Mitchell's voice interrupted, hijacking every Vrex communication channel across their entire empire. This isn't unprovoked, Commander. You committed genocide. And we're not violating any protocols. Every weapon we're using has been cleared for use against military targets. Your soldiers die. Your civilians live. Be grateful we're showing more mercy than you showed the Torlians. Then something happened that broke the Vrex military psychologically. Human ships began broadcasting on all frequencies. Not threats. Not demands. Just audio recordings from the Torlian massacre. The sounds of children screaming as Vrex soldiers hunted them through school corridors. The final transmissions of families begging for mercy. The desperate calls for help that nobody answered. Hours of death cries, played on loop across every Vrex military channel. Vrex soldiers started breaking. Their communication networks filled with panic. They'd never faced an enemy that understood fear as a weapon. In all their previous conquests, they'd been the ones inspiring terror. Now they were the ones hearing ghosts screaming in their headsets. Captain Rebecca Hayes watched from the Harmony as a Vrex Admiral's flagship tried to flee the system. She calmly marked it for intercept. 3 human destroyers cornered it within minutes, cutting off every escape route. The Vrex Admiral transmitted a surrender request. I yield. I surrender. Council protocols demand you accept. Rebecca's voice was ice cold. Admiral Vex, I watched your service record. You commanded the Torlian operation. You specifically ordered schools targeted first. You told your soldiers to make it hurt. I was following orders from high command. Then you're a coward as well as a murderer, Rebecca interrupted. You have 2 options. Eject in an escape pod and face trial for war crimes. Or go down with your ship. Choose now. The Admiral ejected. Rebecca had him taken into custody, already compiling evidence for the tribunal. She felt no satisfaction, only cold determination. 12 billion Torlians deserved justice and she was going to make sure they got it. Across Vrex space, the story repeated on 300 worlds. Human forces dismantled military infrastructure with surgical precision while simultaneously evacuating civilians. The Vrex population watched in confusion as human soldiers herded them away from military zones, provided medical care, established safe zones, and then systematically obliterated everything behind them. In the Galactic Council chambers on the neutral world Haven, emergency sessions devolved into chaos. The gathered species watched in real time as human forces operated with a level of coordination and controlled brutality nobody had imagined possible. They're destroying everything, the council speaker declared, his voice shrill. This level of force is excessive. This is perfectly legal, Ambassador Trell of the Kelter interrupted, checking his data tablet. I've reviewed every strike. They're hitting legitimate military targets. Civilian casualties are minimal, actually lower than most council-sanctioned military operations. They're evacuating population centers before striking. They're providing medical aid. They're following the warfare protocols better than we do. But the scale of it, another delegate protested. The psychological warfare, the overwhelming force, the simultaneous strikes across hundreds of worlds. None of that is illegal, Trell confirmed. We wrote the rules assuming everyone would fight like us. Civilized, restrained, limited. We never considered what would happen if someone followed the letter of our laws while completely ignoring the spirit of them. On Vrexer Prime, Supreme Commander Krell realized his entire military was collapsing. Not just losing battles. Collapsing completely. Officers were abandoning their posts. Soldiers were surrendering en masse. Entire fleets were going dark to avoid being targeted. 72 hours. That's all it had taken. 72 hours for humanity to reduce the Vrex Dominion's military from a galactic power to scattered remnants hiding in fear. Admiral Mitchell's face appeared on every screen across Vrexer Prime, broadcast to every Vrex world simultaneously. Supreme Commander Krell, your military is finished. You have 2 options. Option 1, you and your war council surrender for trial. Your military is dissolved. Your people will be free to rebuild under council supervision. We'll even help. Option 2, you refuse and we continue operations until there's nothing left of your military infrastructure. Krell's scales flushed with defiance and fear. The council will stop you. They won't allow. The council is already here, James interrupted. They've been debating for 3 days while we've been working. They'll condemn us. They'll threaten sanctions. But they won't actually stop us because they can't. And deep down, every species watching this knows why they can't. You're monsters, Krell hissed. No, James replied calmly. We're humans. There's a difference. Monsters would have done to your civilians what you did to the Torlians. We didn't. Every single civilian casualty we've caused has been accidental and minimal. We've evacuated your cities. We've provided medical care. We've protected your people even while destroying your military. That's the difference between justice and genocide, Commander. Learn it. Captain Rebecca Hayes, still monitoring Vrex communications, heard military channels filled with surrender requests. Entire battle groups laying down arms. Officers begging for terms. A military structure that had terrorized 6 species over a century was collapsing under the weight of an enemy that fought without mercy but with perfect precision. She thought about the Torlian father she'd watched die, protecting his children in that escape pod. She thought about the teacher who'd blocked the door with her own body. She thought about 12 billion names carved in stone back on Earth. Admiral, she transmitted to Mitchell, Vrex communications are complete chaos. Command structure is broken. I'm receiving surrender requests from 43 different commanders. They're done. Accept all surrenders, James replied. Prepare detention facilities. War crimes trials begin immediately. A young officer on Rebecca's bridge spoke up. Captain, was this right? What we did? Rebecca looked at the view screen, at the Vrex homeworld below, at the destroyed military installations and the protected civilian zones. We destroyed their ability to commit genocide. We did it without becoming genocidal ourselves. We showed more mercy than they deserved. Yes, it was right. The Galactic Council ships finally arrived at Vrexer Prime, 3 days too late to affect anything. Their lead diplomat transmitted to Admiral Mitchell, demanding an immediate ceasefire. James replied simply, the ceasefire begins when Commander Krell surrenders for trial. Not before. 6 hours later, Krell and his entire war council walked out of their command center with their hands raised. Human soldiers took them into custody, treating them with professional dignity they hadn't shown to the Torlians. The reckoning was complete. In 72 hours, humanity had accomplished what the Galactic Council couldn't do in a century. They'd stopped the Vrex Dominion. And the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. 6 months after the Vrex military ceased to exist, Captain Rebecca Hayes stood in the Memorial Garden on Earth, looking at names carved into black stone. 12 billion names. The garden covered 10 acres in Geneva, right next to the UN headquarters. Every single Torlian who died had their name recorded here. It had taken 4 months just to carve them all. Rebecca wasn't alone. 3 Torlians stood beside her. The only 3 survivors of their entire species. Human deep space rescue teams had found them in a cargo vessel, drifting in a damaged stasis pod far from the massacre site. 3 people. That's all that remained of a civilization that had existed for thousands of years. Why did you do this? One of them asked, her voice soft. She gestured at the endless rows of names. You didn't know most of our people. Why remember them? Rebecca turned to face her. Because someone needed to remember. Because your people mattered. Because we wanted you to know that their deaths weren't meaningless to us, even if they were meaningless to the Vrex. The Torlian woman reached out and touched one of the names. Her daughter, Rebecca realized. Our culture believes that people live as long as someone speaks their name. Thank you for helping them live a little longer. They stood in silence for a while. Then Rebecca's communicator buzzed. Time to go. The Galactic Council had finally scheduled the hearing about Earth's actions, and she'd been called to testify. The council chambers on Haven were packed. 300 species had sent representatives. This wasn't a normal session. This was the council deciding what to do about humanity, and everyone wanted to watch. Ambassador David Patterson stood at the human delegation's platform as the charges were read aloud. Violations of proportional response doctrine. Unauthorized military action without council approval. Use of psychological warfare. Deployment of excessive force. The list went on for 20 minutes. When it was his turn to speak, David didn't argue the charges. He didn't make excuses. Everything you've said is accurate, he began, his voice carrying across the chamber. We violated the spirit of your warfare protocols while following the letter of them. We used methods you consider barbaric. We showed no mercy to the Vrex military. We struck 300 worlds simultaneously without asking permission. All of that is true. He paused, looking around the massive chamber. And we'd do it again tomorrow. We'd do it 1,000 times. Because for 2 centuries, we've watched this council condemn genocide after genocide while doing absolutely nothing to stop it. The chamber erupted in protest. Delegates shouted in dozens of languages. David waited patiently for silence. You condemned the Vrex when they eliminated the Kelmar species 40 years ago, he continued. Economic sanctions for 5 years. They waited them out. You condemned them when they wiped out the Poran colonies. Another round of sanctions. They ignored those too. You've written 27 formal condemnations against the Vrex over the past century. Not one of them prevented a single death. David pulled up the footage from the Torlian massacre on the main screens. The council speaker tried to object, but David overrode him. You need to see this again. You need to remember what your civilization failed to prevent. The chamber watched in silence as Torlian children died on screen. As hospitals were targeted. As families huddled together in their final moments. 12 billion people died, David said quietly, while you debated proper diplomatic responses. While you worried about proportional force and appropriate sanctions. The Vrex admitted to genocide and laughed about it because they knew you wouldn't do anything meaningful. He looked directly at the council speaker. We're not asking for your approval. We're not apologizing. We're telling you how things are going to be from now on. Earth will remain a council member. We'll follow your rules on trade, diplomacy, territorial disputes, and everything else. But if another species commits genocide, we will respond. Immediately. Decisively. Completely. You can condemn us. You can threaten sanctions. But you won't stop us. Why not? A delegate challenged. What makes you think you're above council authority? David smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Because everyone in this chamber knows you can't stop us. You just watched us dismantle the Vrex military in 72 hours. You saw us coordinate strikes across 300 worlds. You witnessed warfare you didn't think existed anymore. And now you're scared. Not of what we did. Of what else we might be capable of. The vote to censure Earth passed with an overwhelming majority. 243 species voted yes. Only 12 voted no. The resolution condemned Earth's actions as excessive and inappropriate. The vote to expel Earth from the Council never even reached the floor. Nobody wanted to propose it. Nobody wanted to find out what humanity might do outside Council oversight. In the months that followed, something shifted in galactic politics. Species that had been pushing boundaries suddenly became very interested in following rules. Border disputes that might have escalated into conflicts found peaceful resolutions. Minor territorial disagreements got settled through negotiation instead of force. And when the KRLL Confederacy began making threatening moves toward the smaller Rendax species, massing troops on their border and demanding territorial concessions, they stopped immediately after receiving a single message from Earth. The message was brief: we're watching. The KRLL withdrew their forces the same day. Admiral James Mitchell retired 3 months after the operation. His career ended with both Medals of Honor and official censures from the Council. He didn't care about either. He bought a small cabin in Colorado and spent his days hiking in the mountains, trying to find peace with what he'd done and what he'd ordered others to do. Sometimes late at night he'd wake up hearing the Torlian transmissions. The screaming children. The desperate families. He'd remind himself that stopping future genocides was worth becoming what humanity had tried not to be. Most nights he believed it. Lieutenant James Tucker got promoted to captain and received command of the Harmony. His first mission was diplomatic, mediating a trade dispute between two minor species in a system near Earth. When he arrived, both sides immediately agreed to every compromise Earth proposed. That was easy, his communications officer commented. They didn't even negotiate. James looked at the alien ships maintaining a very respectful distance from the Harmony. They're terrified of us now. They saw what we did to the Vrex. They know what we're capable of when we stop being civilized. Is that good? The officer asked. James thought about the question for a long time. It's better than genocide. It's not ideal. Fear isn't the same as respect. But right now it keeps people alive. Maybe that's enough. Captain Rebecca Hayes became an admiral and took command of Earth's Rapid Response Fleet. A force specifically designed to deploy anywhere in the galaxy within 72 hours. The fleet's existence was a clear message. Earth was done waiting for the Council to act. She kept a reminder on her desk. A small stone from the Torlian Memorial with a single name carved into it. A 6-year-old girl who died in her classroom when the Vrex attacked. Rebecca looked at that stone every single day and asked herself the same question. Was it worth it? The answer was always yes. But that didn't make it easy. 5 years after the Vrex incident, a border conflict between the Hadron Empire and the Zeltari coalition threatened to escalate. Both sides were mobilizing armies. The rhetoric was getting violent. Intelligence suggested the Hadron Empire was planning to eliminate several Zeltari colonies completely. Captain James Tucker's ship arrived in the system before shots were fired. He didn't make threats. He didn't deploy weapons. He simply broadcast one message to both sides. This is Captain Tucker of Earth's military forces. We're here to mediate this dispute. Both sides will send representatives to peace talks within 24 hours. We expect productive negotiations and a peaceful resolution. Both sides sent representatives in 12 hours. The dispute was resolved in 3 days. No shots fired. No casualties. Just two species who decided that whatever they were fighting about wasn't worth finding out what would happen if they didn't cooperate. After the negotiations, the Hadron ambassador approached James privately. Captain, why do we listen to you? Your species isn't the most advanced. You don't have the largest fleet. You're not even particularly old by galactic standards. So why does everyone do what Earth says? James thought about the Torlians floating in space. The Vrex military that vanished in 3 days. The galaxy that learned what humanity became when civilization failed. Because everyone knows that humanity prefers peace, he said simply. We really do. We'll negotiate. We'll compromise. We'll follow diplomatic protocols and council procedures. We'll be patient and civilized for as long as it works. But everyone also knows what happens when those things don't work. When someone crosses certain lines. You become monsters, the ambassador said quietly. No, James corrected. We become something worse. We become efficient. The Vrex learned that lesson. Nobody else wants to. The ambassador nodded slowly and left without another word. Humanity returned to being civilized members of the Galactic Council. They followed the rules. They pursued diplomacy. They chose peace whenever possible. But the galaxy never forgot what happened when they chose something else. And in the decades that followed, not a single species committed genocide. Border conflicts still happened. Trade disputes continued. Political tensions remained. But nobody eliminated entire populations anymore. Some species called it justice. Others called it tyranny. Philosophers debated whether Earth had saved galactic civilization or corrupted it. The Council remained officially critical of Earth's actions while quietly grateful for the results. But the 12 billion Torlians whose names were carved in stone on Earth would never know that their deaths changed everything. They'd never know that their genocide was the last one the galaxy allowed to happen. Because humanity remembered something the galaxy had forgotten. Sometimes the most moral thing civilization can do is remember how to be uncivilized. Sometimes protecting the innocent requires becoming dangerous to the guilty. The galaxy called it many things. But humanity called it simple. They called it justice. And they made sure everyone remembered what happens when justice is denied for too long. The end.